Now, we can all agree that living as a student is hard. Mostly because you have to try and coordinate work with study, especially when you get older, you're in uni or at the end of high school. And especially for those people who want to kind of dedicate themselves to something that feels purposeful, such as a business, a hobby, a passion, but they don't have all the time in the world to dedicate to that passion because they have all the schoolwork to manage as well. And we're living in a society where entrepreneurship is becoming more and more common amongst younger people. And we have 17, 18, 19-year-olds who are trying to get into entrepreneurship. So, how do we, as students, as young adults, manage to enjoy our passions, fully invest in our passions while dealing with schoolwork, exams, tests, etc.? Now, if you've watched my previous videos, you know I'm always talking about trying to make the most out of school hours, trying to do all the assigned work at school, leaving as little homework as possible to your free time. But today we're going to talk about some other things that we could do. So, the first thing that I wanted to talk about was to eat the frog. Now, it's a terminology which nowadays has actually become more common. But if you don't know what it means, it's pretty much just doing the hardest task of the day as soon as you wake up in the morning. So, the reason it's called Eat the Frog is because, let's say, for example, if you were in a hypothetical situation to actually have to eat the frog during a meal, you would probably have it before the meal starts, so that then you would enjoy the meal rather than after, so that, let's say, the taste of the frog's still in your mouth and it just tastes disgusting and it's kind of ruined your entire dinner. So, basically, how this works is you wake up in the morning. If you have a morning routine, you can do that morning routine, I don't know, cold shower, meditation. This video isn't about that, so we'll skip past it. But pretty much, if you finish that morning routine, you just focus on eating the frog and getting rid of the schoolwork, or let's say either getting rid of the schoolwork or doing the purposeful work then. So you've already done some of the necessary work. So pretty much, if you dedicate this Eat the Frog time to do schoolwork, this allows you to dedicate more of your free time later on to your purpose. So for example, you write the really hard essay at the start in the morning. That will leave the rest of the day for you to focus on your purpose and your tasks. Or if you have a lot of time, you can actually dedicate this Eat the Frog time to do that purposeful activity that you wanted to do. For example, if you are actually thinking about entrepreneurship, you could dedicate this time at the start of the morning to actually work on your business if you consider that to be the hardest tasks of the day. So, you may be asking, how exactly can you fit this eat the frog task in your day if you have school in the morning? And the answer is pretty simple. You wake up 1 hour earlier. I know this sounds crazy, and it sounded crazy to me, considering that a year ago I'd wake up every morning at 7:20 a.m. and now every morning I wake up at 6:30 a.m., which isn't exactly 1 hour, it's 50 minutes, but it's given me a lot more time to be able to focus on the eat the frog task. So, how you can start waking up earlier in the morning is just to kind of go to bed 15 minutes earlier, and then just wake up 15 minutes earlier, and then just do that, constantly add 5 to 10 minutes until it gets to 1 hour. That's how I did it. So originally last year I woke up at 7:20. At the start of this school year I started waking up at 7 a.m. Then it went to 7:15, and now it's gone to 6:30. So I kind of added about 15 minutes gradually, and I also started going to bed 1 hour earlier. So if you really don't want to do this, the alternative is to just do this eat the frog task as soon as you're back home from school. But this can be difficult. In Italy here, we finish school during lunchtime, so I'd be working as soon as I finished lunch, and it's a lot harder to do that difficult task when you've had lunch and let's say maybe you've consumed a bit of carbohydrates, which have made your brain a bit dizzy. Gives you that so-called brain fog. Or if it's English school, it finishes at, I think, 4:30. You get back home, I think you'd kind of need time to go to the gym, and then you're back. And it's just kind of hard that late at night focusing on the difficult task because you're really tired and you've used your brain on other stuff throughout the day, so there's not much left energy wise. So my recommendation would be to wake up 1 hour earlier, but if you can't, you can try and do it as soon as you get back home, but I wouldn't really recommend that. So we've just talked about how you can manage your purposeful tasks with your school tasks. Now, let's kind of change the discussion, because I've already made a sufficient amount of videos talking about this subject on how to manage schoolwork. Now let's talk about the actual hours you spend at school and how to manage the time spent actually studying, working, listening to the teacher's lectures, etc., with the time spent socializing. Because I would argue that nowadays, and I think a lot of people would agree with me here, school is actually more important nowadays for socializing than it is for actually learning important stuff. I mean, I saw this post online recently basically saying that school isn't really important for the things that you study, it's just about how you study them. Which, in other words, is just pretty much saying that everything you study in school isn't useful at all. It's just fucking useless. But school isn't trying to teach you those things, it's just trying to teach you how to study things in general. So it's trying to teach you the methodology rather than the actual sustenance of what it's teaching you. And I would say that's more involuntary than it is voluntary, because I believe that pretty much school is just made in a poor way and it hasn't adapted to modern times. And so I don't think it's voluntary for them to focus more on the methodology rather than the actual content. But based on this, I would say that socializing nowadays at school is actually more important than actually the content that you're studying. And it's probably on the same level as teaching you the methodology. So pretty much, to put it in like a map to make it easier, we have functions of school. Socializing, kind of on top, somewhere here. Socializing in the level with like teaching you the methodology, and then the content's just somewhere down here, because the contents, we can all agree, is pretty useless. Maybe some history facts are pretty useful. I actually like history myself, so I kind of like to remember that stuff. Geography, you could say, is pretty useful. But then you have stuff like most of the science stuff. If you're not going to be a doctor, is useless, or a scientist. Obviously, if you are going to be a scientist, it's pretty useful, but if you're not, it's just fucking useless. Most of like literature stuff, if you're not interested in it, it's going to be useless. A lot of the art stuff. So yeah, nowadays the content in school is pretty useless. So how do we manage social life at school with the actual work? So I think it's pretty hard to be sociable and to be hardworking at the same time. So I'd say that at school, the days where I'm kind of more distracted, working less, I'm kind of more sociable, I'm socializing a lot more with people around me. And the days where I'm working really hard, I'm kind of quiet, not speaking to anyone. And so what I would suggest is to kind of choose the hours where you're going to be sociable and the hours where you're going to work hard. So if maybe there's a subject where you're really good at, so like you don't have to work that much, or a subject which you take for granted, let's say, maybe a subject you're just so good at you don't really have to work that much, you can just be sociable that hour, obviously without disturbing the lesson too much. But I mean, you can be a bit more distracted, have a couple of conversations with people around you. Instead, the hours where there's a subject where you kind of have to improve on, maybe you're not really good at maths, science, etc., you can be hardworking in those hours and be less sociable. So that's pretty much what I was gonna talk about for this video. There's nothing much left to speak about. So if you did enjoy the video, you can show your support, do what you want really, like, subscribe, share, whatever. If there's one thing I do ask you to do, is to keep a strong mind and stay like a lion.